got a really challenging topic today. Relative clauses. Let's start with the relative pronouns. The aim of our lesson is to learn how to describe people, places, and things using the relative pronouns. But which are the relative pronouns? The relative pronouns are who, which, that, or whose. We use who or that for people, which or that for things, whose for possessions. These relative pronouns put two sentences together. For example, I have a friend. She is a model. I have a friend who is a model. Another example. I have a friend. Her father is a doctor. I have a friend whose father is a doctor. So the relative clauses provide information about the noun. As you noticed in the example here, who is a model refers to the noun friend. We have got two types of relative clauses, defining relative clauses and non-defining relative clauses. Let's start with defining relative clauses. Defining relative clauses contain information which is essential for our understanding of the whole sentence. For example, my student who or that comes from Italy is allergic to peanuts. So, who comes from Italy is allergic to peanuts is really essential information for me to understand what student is being talked about. Or another example, he has got a computer program which translates texts from Italian into English. He might have a lot of computer programs, but it is being talked about the one which translates texts from Italian into English. Some features of defining relative clauses are no commas are required, either at the beginning or the end of the relative clause. As you can see, we do not use commas. That can be used instead of who or which. Defining relative clauses. So for defining relative clauses, the relative pronouns are when it is the subject for people who and that, for things which or that. When it is the object, who or that, for things which or that. And to show possession, for people whose, for things as well, whose. The relative pronoun can be omitted. Omitted means removed if it is the object of the relative clause. For example, I'm reading the book, which or that you lent me. Now, which is the object of the sentence? The book. And the relative pronoun which or that refers to the book, to the object of the sentence. And if I remove that, the sentence makes sense. I'm reading the book you lent me. But the relative pronoun cannot be omitted if it is the subject of the relative clause. For example, that's the shop assistant who or that served me the last time I came here. So the shop assistant is the subject of the sentence. Who or that refer to the subject of the sentence, which in this case is the shop assistant. That's why we cannot remove that. Non-defining relative clauses. Non-defining relative clauses contain information which is not essential for our understanding of the sentence. We can identify which person or thing is being talked about without the information in the relative clause. My new house, which has a lot of rooms, is much larger than my previous one. So, which has a lot of rooms is extra information. My new house is much larger than my previous one. Some features of non-defining relative clauses. Commas are required both at the beginning and the end of the relative clause. As you can see, we put commas. That cannot be used instead of who or which. So we cannot replace who or which with that. So for non-defining relative clauses, we use these relative pronouns. When it is the subject for people, we use who. For things, which. When it is the object for people, we use who. For things, which. And to show possession, we use whose. Relative pronouns cannot be omitted. For example, the contract, which is over 12 pages long, must be mailed today. So we cannot remove which because it's necessary in this case. Relative clauses and prepositions. Prepositions usually come at the end of the relative clause. The town, which I grew up in, has changed a lot since I left. Or the town I grew up in has changed a lot since I left. So in is in the end of the relative clause. Relative adverb where is equal to in which or at which, and it refers to a place. For example, they've booked a week in that campsite where we stayed last year. Now, we will continue with our book. Exercise number 1 says, study sentences A to F, then choose the correct options to complete the rules. So you are going to study the sentences and you are going also to underline the correct option or alternative in each rule. The rules are explained previously in our lesson. Exercise number 2 says, complete the sentences with who, whose, or whose. Whose, this one in this case, means who is. Whose here, who is. Have you met the guy who's sitting over there? Who is sitting over there? Okay? Complete that and then email me the photo of that. Exercise number 3 says, join the sentence halves with where, who, whose, or which. So you have got sentence halves and then you're going to put the correct relative pronoun and also the rest of the sentence. Like the first example which I have done. I know a girl who lives in Canada. In exercise number 4, you have got a text where you have to put the correct relative pronoun as well. Read it carefully and put the appropriate relative pronoun. Now, pronunciation. So, we cannot listen, but I can explain you something. What is the difference between that in the two sentences? So that is a demonstrative adjective. So that is stressed. That course sounds like a lot of fun. You'll visit places that you didn't know existed. So that in the second sentence is a weak form of that. Exercise number 6 is a homework. Make sentences using the phrases in the chart. Then compare your ideas with a partner. We cannot compare as we're not in the class, but you're going to write sentences. And write the sentences in your notebook. That was the lesson for today. Bye.